Well, you know, it's about time.
Oh, you brought the copy of Scream.
Yeah.
Wow, congratulations. I hear it's great. I've been reading everyone's rave review of it.
Thank you.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Bernard. Mr. Morris, sir.
No, misters.
Mr. Wendell here and Mr. Irvin. Wow, thank you.
You're welcome.
You got to sign one, though.
Yeah, I will.
Oh, my God. You wrote...
Wow.
You did the story in Frankenstein, the true story.
I
like this
the whole
one.
magazine, yeah.
I like the way he aged. It got uglier and uglier.
Yeah. I won the Rondo Award last year for Best Article of the Year for that.
Does Dave Duvall know? Because
He's very jealous.
he owns every Rondo. I've been nominated once, and anyone who says it's an honor to be nominated is full of crap.
Full of crap. You want to win.
I want to win, and then David Duvall has like a shelf of them.
Yeah.
And did you get him before it passed, Michael?
No.
Gumball Raleigh? Yeah.
But Michael Sarrazin.
Thank you. You know, and I got the issue with Screenplay. They put it out as a paperback novel. I found it at Half Price Books.
Yep.
It's amazingly good. Why isn't this on DVD?
It is on DVD.
What?
Universal, all 3 hours. It's really great. You got to get it.
You know what? I was in love with Jane Seymour from This Time Met Her.
Yeah. I interviewed her twice. I interviewed her in 1974 when I was 17, right after this came out, in London.
Wow.
And then 40 years to the month, I interviewed her again for this magazine.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Congratulations on the Rondo, by the way.
Thank you.
One second, guys. Do you want to go live on the app?
What?
Do you want to go live on the app?
Sure, why not?
Why not?
Let's spread it like wildfire.
Oh, and Heather Hopper says hi.
Oh, great.
We're going to have her on one of these days.
That's so cool.
Hopper, wow.
Yeah, she's adorable.
She was in my film Elvira's Haunted Hills. She was
Really
fantastic.
Hopper? Wow.
And by the way, that's a great movie. I mean, Miles Planet.
No.
6:59. We're on in the minute, and I love the Oblivion movies. You know,
cool.
Those are two of my favorite of your work. I love that you had no money, and yet you put this weird, scrappy universe together. It's really charming.
It was great. We'll talk about it.
Yeah, please. We're going to do your superhero origin story, obviously. And
Look at these stamps
Silence,
we got
please.
on the
oh, silence.
It's raw, it's uncensored, it's live 24/7. It's kaoticradio.com.
Wow. You know what time it is when this song comes on, don't you, Janky?
Why, that means we're live in the morning, people. The Jeff and Janky Show coming.
The Jeff and Janky Show!
Coming from you from the dark center of the universe, Montclair, California, people. Chaotic Radio.
And we have two guests this morning. We got Samuel Whitehead and Sam Irvington from the detective agency.
What the hell are you talking about?
Just kidding. We have our guest, filmmaker Sam Irving.
Irvin, for God's sake.
And we want to thank Samuel Whitehill for bringing in Sam Irving to the show.
He came into Sam's counsel to make sure Sam doesn't say anything objectionable. Sam is a Rondo Award-winning writer and, of course, a film director who's done a ton of stuff. I'm personally, if you look at Amazon Prime, it's littered with Sam's movies, including Elvira making fun of two of my favorites of his films. Oblivion and Oblivion 2 Backlash.
Ah, yes, the full moon movies.
Wow, tell us about that. You made those in... Well, let's start with your superhero origin. Because, I mean, you've covered the waterfront. You've done horror. You've done Scream Queen movies. You've gone all the way to making the Lifetime movies for Hallmark, for the Christmas...
I've done the gamut of everything. But I grew up loving horror films.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Asheville, North Carolina.
Wow. Okay, where they shot Evil Dead 2.
Oh, my God.
The Paint Factory.
Wow. All right.
And gymnasium. They built the cabin in the gym of your high school.
That's amazing. My dad owned movie theaters, so and this was back in the day when there was before video and all that kind of stuff. So if you were going to see a movie more than once, you had to go pay for it in the theater, or maybe wait for it to come on one of the 3 networks. And so I had the unique ability to be able to see movies, a bunch of times for free and collect the movie posters and all that kind of stuff growing up. So I was just a real, movie kid from the youngest age. When I was 8, we took a trip to California, and because of my dad's connections, we got a VIP tour at Warner Brothers, and walked on, in 1964, I was 8, we walked onto the set of Blake Edwards' The Great Race. I met Tony Curtis, Jack Lemmon, Natalie Wood, and they were standing on an iceberg in a tank, a huge tank of water with antique cars on the iceberg. And a storm was going on with giant fans blowing and wave machines and rain machines. And the eyes popped right out of my head.
Oh, my God, the wheels start turning.
That's real physical effects, man.
Yeah. I thought up until that time, if they needed to shoot a storm and an iceberg, you'd have to go to the North Pole and wait. And so my dad had an 8mm movie camera. I took it out of his hand and never gave it back, and started making little Dracula movies and stuff with my brother wearing a black beach towel as a cape, and ketchup and all that kind of stuff. And then then when I went to film school at the University of South Carolina.
Wow.
And I was a huge fan of Brian De Palma's early films, like Phantom of the Paradise.
Oh, yes.
Hi, Mom, and all that.
And Hi, Mom, Greetings, Sisters. Wow. And I decided, I was head of the film committee that ran the movie theater on campus. And I decided, let's organize a Brian De Palma Film Festival and see if we can get him to come here. So I looked in Hollywood Reporter. He was casting a movie called Carrie in Hollywood.
Wow.
And it listed the phone number for the casting office.
That's crazy.
I called it up and I said, could I speak to Brian De Palma? And they said, well, he's in session, but he's going to be on a break in 10 minutes. Call back in 10 minutes. I did. They put him right on. I'm like, man.
They put him on? You're like 19, you're like 19 years old.
Yeah. And so he said, listen, I live in New York. I'm kind of broke. I need to get something in my apartment. If you'll give me the airfare to South Carolina, then to New York. And then we have, he goes to a couple of the screenings and everything. And then we're doing Phantom of the Paradise as sort of the climax of this whole weekend. And midnight show on Saturday night. Everybody's supposed to come in costume. He's the judge. We do all of this. It's sold out. We give the awards and the prizes and judge the best costume. And then the movie starts. And if you remember, the first shot is the Death Records logo.
Yeah, the mockingbird
spinning on the thing.
I dug that.
And there's no sound. And I'm like,
no.
The F word. And I'm like, oh my God. I run up to the projection booth, 16mm projectors.
Oh, the platters.
And
that was the old days. That was my first job, was at a movie theater, and I had to start that thing with the generators and all that.
I would do that too. Go on.
And the sound bulb, because the sound is on the edge of the film, and it's the little squiggly line, and a light has to shine through that, and the sound bulb had burned out, and there was no spare, and it's Saturday night after midnight. And we had to cancel the freaking screening.
And you're sitting next to him.
And I'm sitting next to him.
Oh, no.
And I thought, oh, crap. All the goodwill that I've built up to now has just been flushed down the toilet. Luckily, De Palma has a very dark sense of humor.
Oh, no.
And he thought it was hilarious, and he loved to make fun of me and to tell other people, what I had done to him. And so I did become his assistant and worked with him on several films. But that was, it actually worked in my favor because it made me memorable, I guess. And, And
I'll never forget that.
Yeah. So after that, I worked between my junior and senior year. Carrie came out. It was a huge breakthrough hit for him.
Were you on the set of Carrie?
No, I was not, and I was in school, and it just pissed me off like no tomorrow. I so much wanted to work on it. But after it became a hit, then his next film was The Fury, which was a big budget, 20th Century Fox with Kirk Douglas, John Cassavetes, and a huge cast. And I called him up because now I have his phone number, and I said, "Hey, you guys are shooting the summer in Chicago. I'm between my junior and senior year, so I'm off for the summer. Can I please come up and work on the film as a production assistant or anything?" And he said, "Sure, come on up." So that was my first professional gig, was working on that as a production assistant. I also was an extra in the amusement park scene where Andrew Stevens is walking through the place and everything's exploding because
the Arab guys are throwing off the roller coaster,
spinning around on the rides and all that stuff. And
Jim Belushi was an extra on that as well.
Yes.
The Melvin Dunwoody phone call scene.
And Daryl Hannah has a small part.
Oh, that's right.
One of the teenage girls.
Cool.
And of course, Amy Irving is in it, and Fiona Lewis, who I was really excited to meet because she was in some of the horror films that I love.
Oh, hell yeah.
Like Dr. Phibes Rises Again.
Wow, and The Fury.
She was in The Fearless Vampire Killers, the Roman Polanski film.
Is she in the Fearless? I did not know
She's
that.
She's one of the girls in the tavern. And
our favorite Bad Jaws ripoff, Tina Turner.
Yes. So, I mean, I was practically more excited to meet Fiona Lewis than Kirk Douglas. Well, almost. And then, but the other cool thing that happened was I kind of jumped over some stuff. We'll go back and talk about it. But as a teenager, I had been editing and publishing a fanzine called Bizarre, and it was on horror films. And I learned very quickly that if you have a magazine and you want to interview people, they will very likely say yes.
Isn't that amazing?
So I immediately got an assignment from Cinefantastique magazine. Which
I love that magazine.
Oh my God, you wrote for Fred Cook.
Yep. And I got an assignment from Fred to do, the making of The Fury, a journal on the making of the film. So now
double-sized issue coming right up.
Yeah. Well, that's what he was promising at first, a cover and everything. And so that allowed me to ask for one-on-one interviews with Kirk Douglas and John Cassavetes and everybody involved in the film. And even in post-production, I interviewed John Williams, who did the music.
You interviewed John Williams?
And I interviewed Paul Hirsch, the editor, who did a little film called Star Wars. And so,
wow.
And it was just incredible. So, even though I was a production assistant, low man on the totem pole, who usually, you would kind of not get to talk to all the big people because they'd basically tell you, stay in your place, don't talk to anybody. I did get to talk to everybody, and it was fantastic. So out of that, then I went back to school for my senior year. And
back in Asheville?
And University of South Carolina.
Okay.
And then De Palma in the spring was teaching a screenwriting course at Sarah Lawrence College in New York, and he had a treatment for a film called Home Movies. His class, he's kind of assigned different scenes to different students, and by the end of the semester, they had a complete screenplay.
Wow. And
De Palma decided, I want to direct this movie this summer as a low-budget film. And so he knew I was graduating. He called me up and said, "Hey, after you graduate, do you want to come up and work on this film?" And I'm like, yes! So I took my last exams. I didn't even wait for the graduation ceremony. Got on the plane, went up to New York, and we shot it at Sarah Lawrence College. And I figured...
Oh, you shot that on campus?
Yeah. And I figured he was calling me to come up and be a production assistant again, like I had been on The Fury. I get off the plane, and he goes, "You're going to be the associate producer and production manager."
Holy crap.
So it was kind of like throwing me in the deep end to see if I could swim. And and I somehow managed to, and it was fantastic. And the movie had Kirk Douglas, Nancy Allen, Keith Gordon, Vincent Gardenia, had Garrett Graham, who was Beef and Phantom of the Paradise. And
Vincent Gardenia from Death Wish.
Yeah. I mean, it was a fantastic cast and an incredible experience.
Z Channel used to run it all the time.
Yeah, and so after that, then he asked me to stay on as his personal assistant, and I worked on Dress to Kill and a whole bunch of projects that he had in development and different stuff.
Did you work on Blowout?
I did work on about a year on the development of Blowout, and just as it was about to start shooting, met Travolta and everything, and And just as it was about to start shooting, then De Palma recommended that I produce a film called The First Time that was directed.
William Cott. Lauren.
Well, no, it's this was Tim Choate, Wallace Shawn,
Tim Choate,
and Wendy Jo Sperber, and Catherine Damon from Soap, and it was sort of coming-of-age comedy, and it was co-written by Bill Finley, who was the Phantom of the Paradise.
And Melvin Dunwoody in The Fury.
Yep, and he was the villainous doctor and sisters. He and his wife, Susan Finley, co-wrote that screenplay.
Are you serious?
And De Palma served as an executive producer or creative consultant guy on it. And so I went off and produced that, and we did it for New Line Cinema. And but I really wanted to direct, and I then did a short film called Double Negative, and it was about a horror film director who's making a low-budget film called Coat Hanger Massacre. And his the director's played by Bill Randolph, who was the taxi cab driver in Dressed to Kill, the one who opens the door and slams it into Michael Caine,
right?
As Nancy Allen's jumping out of the cab. And so he plays the director, and his sleazy producers, who are played by Bill Finley, Mr. Phantom of the Paradise, and Wayne Knight, who's Newman on Seinfeld.
Newman on Seinfeld in Jurassic Park.
Park, and he's also an interrogator in Basic Instinct.
He said his main direction, he told me during an interview for Starlog magazine, his main direction from my husband is, put your tongue in and out of your mouth like a lizard. And then he said he was so crushed. He was so crushed on Jurassic Park. This is Wayne Knight's story to me. He goes, this is Universal. This is the big time. This is Spielberg. He goes, my rain poncho fits beautifully and all that. And he said, Spielberg's frowning. And he goes, and he sees Spielberg whisper to assistants, and the assistant off. Assistant comes running off, and he goes, Wayne, take that off. Throw this on. And he said he gave him a rain poncho 3 sizes too small. He was crushed.
Oh, that's hilarious. That's great. Well, so anyway, in this short film, these two sleazy producers, Bill Finley and Wayne Knight, have decided that instead of letting the director finish his movie, Coat Hanger Massacre, they'll make more money if they steal the negative and collect the insurance. So the director finds out about the scheme, and he has to beat them to the crime and all that kind of stuff. So it was a fun little 20-minute short film. I shot it on 35 millimeter, financed it myself on credit cards, and it got accepted into Sundance, got some buzz there. It got It opened theatrically with Martin Scorsese's After Hours. In L.A. and then New York. It played with Emerald Forest, the John Boorman.
Oh, amazing John Boorman, starring his son.
Yes, and Janet Maslin reviewed my short in the New York Times and gave it a really nice review. So that gave me a calling card and buzz to get my first feature off the ground, which was Guilty as Charged, starring Rod Steiger.
My friend Erwin Keys.
Heather Graham, Lauren Hutton, Isaac Hayes, Zelda Rubinstein.
The little lady from
Poltergeist. And
Anguish.
Yes, Anguish. My God.
City Online.
You're the first person I know who even knows Anguish. That is the coolest film.
I tell you, he'd surprise you with stuff.
Okay, so people, Anguish. You've got to seek out this film.
It's weird.
The coolest film. I'm gonna do a little spoiler because it'll intrigue you to want to see it. But it basically starts with Michael Lerner plays this dentist, as I recall, and his mother is Zelda Rubinstein.
Yes.
And he's this very weird guy, and he's like drugging the patients and molesting them or killing them.
They never quite tell you what he's doing, but it's like your mind jumps to the worst conclusions.
Yes, the worst conclusions. So for like 20 minutes, 25 minutes, you're getting all sucked into this story of this weird guy and his weird mother, and it's sort of this
City Online.
It's kind of this Norman Bates, Gothic kind of, crazy, overbearing mother thing, and all this going on, and then all of a sudden you hear this teenage girls kind of giggling off to the side, and I'm like, what? And I'm seeing it in a theater, and I literally looked to my left and my right because I thought the giggles were coming in the theater, but they were actually coming from the screen, and I'm like, what the hell is that? And then all of a sudden, the image that we're watching with this movie, it starts to pull back and reveal that we, for 25 minutes, have been watching a movie within a movie.
Oh, wow.
In a movie theater where the camera pulls back to reveal the seats of a movie theater and this drama going on the screen, and these teenage girls are sitting in the audience.
Wow.
And you're like, holy crap. And they just like yank the rug out from under you.
It was amazing. It's amazing.
So then you start getting involved in these girls that are in the audience. And then one of them gets up to go out to the lobby to go to the bathroom. And then she is attacked in the bathroom and slaughtered by this guy who's this serial killer in the movie theater who's obsessed with the movie and is like imitating the crimes that Michael Lerner's doing in the movie. I mean, it's the coolest concept for a film, and I would love to see it remade sometime, or because that film it barely got out.
It barely got out.
What year was that made?
It was the late 80s, like around 88 maybe. Something like that.
No, Sam, is that even on Blu-ray? I
have
think it is.
No idea, but it was just an incredible. I thought it was an amazing concept. Now that I've given it away, it's sort of like you say, "Oh, Janet Leigh gets stabbed in the shower." It's like, but it was that cool of a concept actually to have to just completely throw a curveball to the audience after 20, 30 minutes into a movie.
Let me ask you this. When you directed Guilty as Charged, your first full-length feature, what did you learn? And tell us about the worst nights, your worst time as a director, your first and worst.
Well, I mean, can you imagine you're doing your first film and the star of the film is Rod Steiger? I mean, this is
the pawnbroker, man. Mars Attacks.
Mars Attacks. He was great.
Yeah. Well, he's
horror.
He's the Oscar-winning actor. He won his Oscar for In the Heat of the Night. He was also nominated for Pawnbroker and On the Waterfront, I guess. And he. But I mean, just an amazing powerhouse actor. And, I was a little intimidated. I didn't know what I was going to be up against. And the guy was a total pussycat. He was so nice and so, he didn't, I was worried he was going to, just walk all over me and I would never be able to give him direction or anything. But he totally was accommodating and everything. On the first day, I was nervous as hell, and I'm sure he could tell. And so we shoot this kind of monologue that he's giving at a podium in the wide shot. We do the master first, and then I'm going to go in for coverage of a tighter shot. And so he calls me over and he says, "No, Sam, what's the framing here? Is it going to be like chest up, waist up, whatever?" And I go, "We're going to do about chest up." And he goes, "Oh, good." He unbuckles his pants, drops them to the floor, and he says, "I'm hot in here." And so he does the rest of the scene in his boxer short.
By the way, they would have Me Too'd the hell out of him if we did that today.
Yeah, exactly. But I think he was, I think he was partly putting on a show to lighten things up and to make everybody laugh. And but he was fantastic.
Margot Kidder hated his guts.
Oh yeah, I'm sure that there were times when he could be a tough cookie, but he couldn't have been nicer to me. And then I actually worked with him again. I did a Showtime film called Out There. It was a UFO comedy.
Yeah.
And he came and did a guest star role in that as a government general who was investigating UFOs and stuff for
Basically the same thing he does in Mars Attacks, right?
Well, there are several things in Mars Attacks, which was made after my film.
Long after your film.
That I wonder about. In Mars Attacks, they have the aliens explode into gook with what is it, like yodeling music or whatever. Yeah. In Out There, the aliens explode with accordion music, and but they explode into the styrofoam popcorn packing stuff.
You were on the budget after all.
Yeah, we didn't have the budget for the slime. So yeah, Steiger ends up playing a role precisely exactly like the one in my film and wears pretty much the same costume and everything. So I've always, I always wondered about that. But
that's a great question because that's not the first time that happened to you. You use a really beautiful South African actress in Oblivion.
Yeah, Lucetta Vander. And then she goes on to play pretty much the same sort of sidekick in Wild Wild West.
Almost the same outfit, too.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And then my Oblivion films, which were sci-fi westerns.
Then by Peter David, the Incredible Hulk writer.
Yes, and Peter's fantastic writer. And that whole concept was sort of ripped off in the
Firefly.
Cowboys and Aliens movie.
Oh yeah,
And on our poster for Oblivion, it's the copy line. It says Cowboys and Aliens. So even like the title of their movie was taken from our poster.
You're right. No, you're exactly right. I mean, what's amazing is that you shot it on the cheap in Romania.
Yes.
But it's so charming and it's so funnily. I mean, I just love it because you have a huge cast. You've got Julie Newmar. You've got George Takei.
Yeah.
You've got Belle Starr. Meg Foster.
Meg Foster, yeah.
I love her so much.
Evelyn in Masters of the Universe.
Yes.
But her eyes are like her greatest special effect, and you use them as a robot.
Again, we didn't have the budget for contact lenses to have strange eyes, so we got Meg Foster.
Cool.
No, tell me about shooting in Romania, because I asked you about this in person. It'd be a good story. Well, Julie Newmar said the Romanian extras are practically dropping dead on camera.
Well, a lot of exaggeration going on, but it was great fun. Labor was very cheap in Romania, and that was the reason to go there. We could build incredible sets. We built, literally, when I got there was a cornfield. We built the entire western town,
really?
Which is still there now as a backlot for Castel Studios. And the last time I saw it being used was on the Hatfields and the McCoys miniseries, the Kevin Costner miniseries a few years ago. So it's still
they used it in Romania. The Bill Paxton Kevin Costner thing.
Yep.
Wow.
Same street, everything. So it was just amazing to have that control and to kind of build everything from the ground up. It was really cool, and it's just a really fun sort of tongue-in-cheek sci-fi western, and Julie Newmar plays Miss Kitty, the feline alien who runs the saloon. And of course, everybody who knows Julie Newmar, she was the original Catwoman on the Batman TV series.
The best Catwoman.
So she was still purring in our film as a sort of an homage to that. George Takei plays the town drunk, and I had him do
the drunken sawbones. Right? Yeah,
and he comes out of the saloon at one point, and I gave him a bottle of Jim Beam, and said, "You got to do it, man." And he did it on camera, and he looks at the bottle and says, "Jim, beam me up," and takes a big swig.
And that's also, you have you're getting applause from Bernard for that. And you also have the great line where you had him say "Great Scotty" at one point.
Yes, Great Scotty.
That's funny.
He also does this the Star Trek hand gesture, whatever it's called. And we put in little aside jokes.
Carl Strachan was great in it. As the mortician.
Yes, Carl Strachan, who everybody knows as Lurch in the Addams Family movies and the Giant in Twin Peaks and everything. He plays the Undertaker, who has ESP powers to know when people are going to die. So he's always there to catch them before they hit the ground, so he can just load them up and take them off to the mortuary.
The amazing thing, I doubled him on a Michael Jackson video that was never finished. It was written by Stephen King, directed by the great Mick Garris.
Yeah.
And I remember Mick goes, when Carol had to go home, Mick goes, "Pat, you're the tallest guy in the set. Step in for him." I'm 6'9", and they needed 2 apple boxes to make me his height.
Yeah. At 6'9", you're still not as tall as Carl.
No, he's amazing. And as a kid, I worked at a video store, and I had a poster for The Prey on my wall. It's not human, and it's got an axe, which was his first movie.
Wow, that's amazing.
He was in Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band.
Yeah.
But The Prey was his first creature movie.
Wow. Well, we called ahead and said, listen, we have a very tall actor, so we need a big bed for him. And they said, oh, we'll cheap labor over here in Romania, we'll build a bed. And so we get over there, and I get there the same time that Carl does, and so I escort him to his room because I want to make sure that he's accommodated well. And
good man, a good director.
So we go in, and they have built a bed that is 10 feet long. However, so something got miscommunicated in translating, the metrics to inches or something. But okay, that's fine. Could be too big, better than too small. The bed is about 2.5 feet wide.
Oh no!
That's a big long slab.
Yes, and his shoulders are falling off both sides of the bed. And he looks at me and kind of rolls his eyes, and he says, "Just get me a king-size bed. I'll sleep diagonally like I always do." So that's what we did. But it was just kind of crazy stuff like that would happen. The food wasn't great. You had to kind of figure that all out. And but otherwise, the crews were fantastic. Everybody was we loved working in Romania. I certainly did, and actually came back to Romania several years later. We'll talk about this later. I don't want to get into it yet because we got too many other cool things that I want to skip over. But Elvira's Haunted Hills was shot in Romania too.
Great movie, by the way. We'll talk about that in a bit because it Boobs and Blood. I did that with Miles Flanagan, and he kept saying, he goes, we have to show Elvira's Haunted Hills, and we have to invite Sam and Elvira and Cassandra.
Yeah, and we had the whole cast there and everything, and I was all set to go, and then I got hired to direct a Lifetime thriller and couldn't come.
They were so bummed when you couldn't make it.
But I went to Miles' house before I left town, and we shot a little video greeting for the audience and everything. But it just killed me that I missed that because Cassandra was there and all the cast. And
she said great things about you. You know what I mean? And we give her the Vincent Price Award. She was very sweet.
I'll get into that in a few minutes.
We'll jump back to that. I'm sorry.
But let me go back to Oblivion for a second.
Please.
I want to also tell your listeners that, also in this incredible cast, we had Isaac Hayes, who had also been in Guilty as Charged with me.
How was he, by the way?
He was the biggest kick. I loved working with him. Always loved his music.
Truck Turner is one of my favorite movies.
And, he won a freaking Oscar for the theme from Shaft.
Yeah, that opening theme, one of the best themes.
That arpeggiated synthesizer sound.
Exactly. And he performed that on the Oscars, bare-chested, wearing a gold chain vest.
Sunglasses, right?
Sunglasses. I mean,
I remember that.
Coolest dude. And then, as an actor, he had been in Escape from New York.
Truck Turner, baby. It's all about Truck Turner.
Yes.
And I just thought he was the coolest guy. So when I got him in Guilty as Charged, we hit it off, and he did several movies for me. He also was in acting on Impulse, and in the both Oblivion films as the bartender and stuff. He was great. Just loved him. Also in the film, as we talked about, was Meg Foster. Also had Maxwell Caulfield from Grease 2.
And Spider-Man the cartoon.
Yes.
What are you doing in the cartoon?
He was the voice of, on the cartoon, I think it was Ned He might have been Ned Leeds. I'm trying to remember what he played in the cartoon, but he was in it.
But anyway, it was just an incredible, fun cast of people. And then... but before we go too far,
please, I'm sorry.
I need to jump back to my teenage days.
Go for it.
My fanzine bazaar, because I don't want to not talk about that, because it was also it was a time when I was writing to all of my idols like Vincent Price, Christopher Lee, Peter Cushing. I was a huge fan of all their movies. All the Vincent Price, Roger Corman movies, but also all the Hammer films. And, oh my God, I just loved it all. So when I started my little fanzine, I would write to them and send them questionnaires, and kind of do interview by mail.
In their own right, in their own handwriting, they would answer your questions.
Yes.
Wow.
So then I would...
That's really smart.
Would print that in the magazines, interview with Christopher Lee or, whoever. Then by the time I got to my third issue, I did one issue a year. I kind of worked on it in the summer when, you school. And
Where would
stuff.
you sell it? Or just...
I would sell it at Cinemabilia in New York.
Wow.
I put ads in other fanzines and had mail orders from all over the world.
Did you know Roy Thomas?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know he did that as well.
Yeah, and also there was Dick Clemenson had started up Little Shop of Horrors magazine the same year I started Bizarre, which was 1972. And so anyway, when I graduated from high school, I went to the Asheville School in Asheville, North Carolina. I bamboozled my parents into, as a graduation gift, sending me to London. And so I wrote, now that I'm good pals, at least pen pals, with Christopher Lee and all these other people, I write to them and I say, hey, I'm coming over. I'd love to meet you in person. And do another interview in person.
Wow.
And Christopher Lee said, sure. So I did.
Yeah, he was
there.
supposed to be a hard case.
So he invites me to lunch at Pinewood Studios,
Where he shot Superman.
where he is making a little film called The Man with the Golden Gun. The
Yes.
James Bond
Wow. Well, he has 3 nipples in that.
movie. Yes. And
Scaramanga.
Scaramanga. Very good, guys. God. This is the summer of 1974. I am like 17 years old. So we have lunch at the commissary at Pinewood. Beautiful, fancy dining room, white tablecloths. It isn't like some little dumpy cafeteria. And then afterwards he says, would you like to hang out the rest of the day and watch us shoot? And I'm like, yeah.
Would I?
How exciting for a high school or a kid. You were like a senior in high school?
Yeah. And so we go back to the set, and everybody's still at lunch. So he gives me a private tour of all the sets.
Wow.
And we're walking through his lair, and and we go through this little hallway where Scaramanga has his butterfly collection behind glass on their dead butterflies that are like tacked up with little pins.
Yeah.
And I go, Mr. Lee, were these real butterflies? And he goes, Sam, this is a James Bond movie, not a Hammer film. And the way he said Hammer film, his nostrils flared as if he had dog dew on the bottom of his shoe. And because this is an actor, I love him to death, and I love those Hammer films so much, but he wanted to be an A-list actor and work with the A-list directors.
Not Dracula.
And to his credit, he ended up working with A-list directors. Spielberg in 1941.
Right.
Tim Burton and a bunch of different movies.
Peter Jackson, George Lucas.
Jackson, and, Lord of the Rings, George Lucas and the Star Wars movies. Martin Scorsese in Hugo.
I forgot he worked for
That's right. Yes.
I mean, this guy.
Hugo's a great movie, by the way, if anyone's listening.
And, he played the bookstore, I don't know what bibliophile or whatever.
It's a great movie. I didn't even know it was George Millet was the character in that until the movie started.
And so, I mean, he really did accomplish that, and it was fantastic. But the thing that's so ironic is that every single one of those directors we just talked about absolutely grew up on the Hammer films, loved them, worshiped them, and that's why they cast Christopher Lee in their movies.
So tell me, were all the butterflies real?
They were real.
They were real.
Because
they
were a Bond film.
Because they were a Bond film and spare no expense. Then everybody comes back from lunch. I get introduced to Roger Moore, Maude Adams, Britt Eklund, the director, Guy Hamilton. And
Tax Exile. That's why
Christopher Lee's sidekick in that movie,
Hervé Villechaize.
Knick-knack.
How was Villechaize? Was it
well, okay. At the end of the day, Christopher says, "Do you want to share a ride with us back to London?" And I'm like, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, little do I know that Pinewood Studios has a Rolls-Royce limo to take their actors back to London. So I get into a Rolls limo, sit in the back in the little fold-down seat where I'm facing back to the back seat. And on the back seat is Christopher Lee, who's like 6'6", and Hervé Villechaize, who's about 3'1". And by now Hervé is like 10 sheets to the wind. He is drunk as a skunk.
He got drunk?
Wow.
And so he starts, as we're riding back to London, he starts to tell stories about all of the prostitutes he's hired since he's been in London and going into very graphic detail of what he's done to each and every one of them and what they have done to him.
Money per diem well spent, it sounds like.
So Christopher Lee, who is, very composed, very kind of serious, serious gentleman, starts to giggle, then starts to laugh, then completely loses it, doubled over in hysterics. And I'm laughing my ass off, and we try to compose ourselves, and then every time we do, then all it takes is Hervé to say one more nasty word, and we bust a gut again. And so by the time,
imagine that.
So it was so surreal to sit across from Dracula laughing hysterically. I mean, it's just I've never seen Christopher Lee laugh. I don't
it's not his persona.
No one has.
And so I just remember we dropped him off at his house at Cadogan Square, and as we're pulling away, and I'm now stuck in the limo with her. I'm just looking out the back window, and before Christopher Lee could go inside to face his wife, he was still busting a gut on the street, doubled over at his gate, and that was the last image I had of Mr. Lee.
Wow.
But it was just an incredible day.
That sounds amazing.
Imagine.
Yeah, no, that's
Now,
amazing.
The other crazy story of that time was that at that time I had written to Vincent Price a million times. He knew me to a degree, and he had also done tours with one-man shows and things in America, and I had driven to see him in Atlanta and some other places, and met him in person several times already. So I'm in London, and I want desperately to interview Diana Rigg because of her appeal in the Avengers.
And
now,
James Bond as well.
Yes, and on Her Majesty's Secret Service. And she had done Theater of Blood with Vincent Price.
That's right. As his
Played
daughter.
Vincent Price's daughter.
And she's great in it.
And was fantastic. So I had a lot I wanted to talk to her about. Her agents were not really playing ball, and so I decided. I saw that she was on the West End in Pygmalion playing on stage. She was playing Liza Doolittle in the drama non-musical version that My Fair Lady was based on. Wow. And Alec McCowan, if you know him, was playing Professor Higgins. So I go see the play, and I'm figuring I'm going to, go to the stage door and try to meet Diana Rigg that way. And I get to the theater, I sit down, and then we're waiting for the play to start, and I hear this very, very familiar laugh behind me. I turn around, and I kid you not, Vincent Price is sitting right behind me with his new wife, Coral Brown, whom he met on Theater of Blood, and she played one of the critics that he killed. And they're sitting there, and I turn around. I start to open my mouth to say something, and he goes, "Sam, what are you doing here?"
I said that to you.
Yeah. Wow. I couldn't believe that he remembered me. And then, it was just crazy. And I explained, I want to meet Diana Rigg to interview her for my fanzine. And he goes, "Well, you're coming backstage with us afterwards." And wow. And that's what happened. We go backstage and have champagne, and he introduces me to Diana. And of course, he says, "This young man wants to interview you." And what is she going to say? No. So she said, "Come back on Wednesday. I'm doing a matinee and an evening show, and we'll do the interview between, because I just kill time at the theater." Wow. And so that's
very generous of her.
It was. It was great. It was great.
I mean, nobody wants to look like an a-hole in front of Vincent Price. But
exactly. But and the interview with Diana was fantastic. She was absolutely lovely.
And she hates critics. She did no stone unturned.
Yeah. But until the very end of the interview, I asked her about working with George Lazenby on Her Majesty's Secret Service. Now, this is back in the day where there's no internet, there's no Google. I couldn't look up articles or other interviews that she had done or anything.
Oh, no.
So she goes, "You already know the stories about George Lazenby, and I am not going to repeat them." And I was like, I didn't know what to say because I didn't know the stories, but apparently they did not get along great, and I had no idea that I was kind of stepping into a hornet's nest, and but anyway, that was the only little wrinkle that happened.
Wow.
But we got over it, and and it was all fine. But I just thought that was funny, and it just illustrates now. You can really do your research, but back then it was really hard to do.
There was no internet. I mean,
Nothing.
For me,
go to the library and
Microfilm.
when I started writing in high school and college, there used to be this big thick book at the library pre IMDb, called the Motion Picture Motion Picture Movie Guide, and you would take this thing down. They felt like the 10 Commandments, and you would whip it open and you would scroll down to somebody's name. It was written by Stanley Ralph Ross, the Batman writer, and you would find their name, and it was like this literally all their credits, not saying what they did in any movie, just listing all their credits.
Yeah, like an index kind of thing. And it was really hard. You had to really do your research back then the hard way, and so it was tricky. But anyway, so I just wanted to get those stories out because I got to ask, since you brought it up, because we're going to go back even further. When you were De Palma's assistant, there's a legendary shot of you, which we should have ready, but we're completely at 7 o'clock in the morning. But there's this legendary shot of you walking Angie Dickinson on the set of Dressed to Kill after she's been murdered. Yes.
You're obviously walking her to a dressing room and shower. It's hilarious.
We're standing in the elevator where she gets slashed, and they were very. I wanted to pose with her. I guess I mean, I just knew this is the Janet Leigh shower moment.
Wow.
And I knew this was going to be iconic. And
you were right, by the way. In a way that Body Double and other stuff weren't.
Yeah, and I wanted to just have a memento of that and a picture. Well, at the time, they were like, there was an embargo. They didn't want it known that she gets slashed, so they didn't want any pictures of that stuff. And so I had to promise them that I wasn't going to release this to anybody, and there wasn't no internet or social media. It wasn't like it was really going to get out there.
The first selfie on the set.
So it literally was a Polaroid that was taken by the wardrobe mistress who carried a Polaroid camera to take pictures for continuity.
Wow.
And I kept that picture, and it's it's a prized possession. If I ever write a memoir, that'll probably be the cover photo because
you're gonna
it's
get
just
another
so crazy.
Rondo. It drives me crazy. I mean, I'm so excited you got a Rondo. Do you pick it up at like a podium, or do they mail it to you? Because I've only been nominated.
Heck, I was so honored to be nominated for Rondo that I
Killer Thriller, Fangoria 1 and 2, my two-parter. That's what I was nominated. I talked to every zombie for Thriller.
Man.
Well, it was for a magazine. I did a guest edited and wrote the whole making of Frankenstein: The True Story, which was a 1973 two-part Frankenstein film that NBC aired in 1973. It was made by Universal, and it starred Michael Sarrazin as the creature,
Tom Baker, David McCollum, and A Severed Hand.
Yes,
and Jessica
James Mason,
Joe, and as the bride, Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman,
and Jane Seymour as the female creature. Leonard Whiting, who'd been Romeo in Zeffirelli's Romeo and Juliet, played Dr. Frankenstein. And it had Sir Ralph Richardson, Sir John Gielgud.
Written by Christopher Isherwood.
Yes, Christopher Isherwood.
Great script.
Who wrote the Berlin stories that Cabaret was based on, and he wrote A Single Man. And his partner and lover, Don Bacardi, the famous artist, co-wrote the screenplay with him. The film has a lot of gay subtext that was very, very, forward-thinking for a network TV movie in 1973, let me tell you. And the unique thing about this production of Frankenstein is that the creature, when he's first brought to life, Michael Sarrazin, he's beautiful. And only as time goes on, his skin starts to deteriorate. And it was a really unique thing that Christopher Isherwood and Don Bacardi brought to the story and made it much more poignant and tragic. And it also, the Dr. Frankenstein sort of abandons the creature once he starts to deteriorate. And it just brought a lot of pathos to that whole to that whole arc of the story. But at any rate, that film really touched me, especially as a closeted gay kid.
So that you can see. Now, do you think you subconsciously picked up the subtext?
Absolutely, not even subconsciously. I was picking it up just right as I was watching it, as when I was 17. I mean, it was just jumping out at me and grabbing me by the throat. And I didn't know if I was imagining it or whatever. And so at any rate, I just became obsessed with that film. And when I went to London that time that we were talking about, where I interviewed Christopher Lee and everything, I tracked down Jane Seymour and interviewed her about it. And I put it on the cover of my fanzine in 1974.
Wow.
And so...
You're forward thinking even then.
So flash forward 40 years, and this guy Dick Clemenson, who I mentioned, was the editor and publisher of Little Shop of Horrors magazine, which started as a little tiny fanzine back in the same days that I was doing mine. He's still going strong now with his magazine.
Wow.
And he knew how much I loved Frankenstein, the True Story, and he called me up and said, "Hey, would you want to spearhead an issue on the making of that film?" And I said, absolutely.
Wow.
And so I guest edited the issue, and I wrote the huge making of, and re-interviewed Jane Seymour 40 years later, and interviewed David McCallum.
In person, right? You said that with them?
In person.
Wow.
And got Christopher Isherwood is no longer with us, the co-screenwriter, but Don McCarty is, and I interviewed him.
Does he live here or back in England?
He lives here.
Wow.
And so I interviewed him, and he confirmed that, yes, all of the gay subtext was absolutely intentional. They were sneaking in as much as they possibly could to get by the censors and everything.
That's
and
great.
It was, and so, it was just a great confirmation that what I imagined in my mind, it was,
you were picking up the subtext.
It was really intentional. And then I also found out that the producer of the film, Hunt Stromberg Jr., was also gay, and he was in on this whole conspiracy to make it the gayest Frankenstein film ever made.
Bride of Frankenstein has a lot of gay subtext as well.
Well, yeah, and it was directed by James Whale, who was gay. And God, there's so many interconnected things. I was one of the producers of the film Gods and Monsters, where Sir Ian McKellen plays James Whale, the director of the original Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein. And we have a flashback scene on the set of Bride of Frankenstein where he's directing. I mean, and Bride of Frankenstein, by the way, is my favorite film of all time.
Oh, seriously?
Yeah, and it's just like it all sort of interconnected the dots. But anyway, this magazine that I did on Frankenstein, the True Story, this miniseries, I'm so proud that I won the Rondo Award.
And I love the embossed version of the.
Yes, I like that.
We've got a little gold decal to put on the cover to tout the award, but I got the award for Best Article of the Year last year at the Rondo Awards. Now, I was so excited about it. They give out the awards at Wonderfest in Louisville, Kentucky. So
Bill Stout said that's his favorite convention.
So I went there to the convention. I'm like, damn, and they told us, they announced the winners beforehand. It wasn't like,
don't fly back there if you're only nominated.
Yeah, if I'm only nominated. But once I won, I'm like, I am going to pick up that award. They're not going to just mail it to me. That's so I was so freaking proud. And it just, it was just such a great. It's for something that's a labor of love,
right?
To get that kind of recognition means a lot. It was great, and so people, if they want to get the magazine, it's Little Shop of Horrors magazine.
Spelled British,
Shop is spelled the old-fashioned way, SHOPPE. So do www.littleshopofhorrors.com. And it's issue number 38, and you'll see Frankenstein, the True Story on the cover. Now, also, I just wanted to mention, we have a triple fold-out artwork cover that is the largest cover ever for a horror magazine, and it's been painted by the amazing Mark Maddox, who has won not one, not two, not three, but 4 Rondo Awards as Artist of the Year.
Wow, so he's a total David Duvall type, where he's covered in Rondos.
Yes. And we also.
It's an honor just to be nominated, Pat sobbed.
I'm also really proud that I got Anne Rice to write the foreword to the magazine. Frankenstein: The True Story is one of her all-time favorite movies,
Seriously?
and it is the film that inspired her to write Interview with the Vampire.
Wow.
So she was really excited to be part of it. I also got Mark Gatiss, who is Mycroft Holmes, the brother of Sherlock Holmes in the Sherlock Holmes series with Benedict Cumberbatch. And Mark Gatiss also created, wrote, and co-produced that whole Sherlock series. And he's a big horror fan in England and has done documentaries on horror films that are, amazing. And he's just an incredible guy. And he wrote a whole article for the magazine called Queer Frankenstein that goes into all of the subtext. All of the subtext.
The title is something is throwing all subtext to the wind.
Yeah. And so anyway, it's quite the issue. And I interviewed, as I say, Jane Seymour, David McCallum, Leonard Whiting, and the co-screenwriter Don Bacardi, and about 20 other people who are still around.
Congratulations!
Thank you. I'm really, really proud of it. I
heard about this article. I had no idea it was you. I love that even as a director, you'll go back to your horror journalism roots.
Yeah. And I love writing about behind the scenes showbiz kind of stuff. And much of the magazine is dealing with the development of the film and how the hell this whole sort of gay mafia managed to get this through the ranks. And it's just a fascinating story. And I'm telling you, this film, I mean, people like Francis Ford Coppola were begging to direct it. And this was right after The Godfather. And Universal did not want him because he had gone $1 million over budget on The Godfather. And they were so worried he was going to be uncontrollable. John Boorman, right after Deliverance,
and Zardoz,
which was up for Oscars and huge hit.
This is before Zardoz.
Right before
Holy
Zardoz.
Cow.
He begged Universal to let him direct it. I have the letter that he wrote to Lou Wasserman, the head of Universal and NCA, begging to let him direct it. And it's just incredible. There were the actors who were almost going to be in it were people like Marlon Brando, Elizabeth Taylor, Richard Burton, all these incredible people that they couldn't afford or thought would be difficult to work with or whatever. And so it's a pretty amazing story. The other thing is that Hans Stromberg Jr., the producer, who I'm writing a book about now, a biography, he grew up in Hollywood. His dad was a huge producer at MGM. His dad produced the Thin Man movies, The Women. He won an Oscar, Best Picture Oscar for The Great Ziegfeld. He also produced Mask of Fu Manchu with Karloff. And so Hans Stromberg Jr. grew up knowing all these Hollywood characters, but he was a big horror film nut. And The Bride of Frankenstein was his favorite film of all time. Wow. He met Elsa Lanchester while she was shooting The Bride of Frankenstein because she was concurrently also doing a movie for his dad at MGM.
Wow.
And so called Naughty Marietta. And anyway, so Elsa Lanchester was a family friend. Boris Karloff was a family friend. Wow. And he grew up always wanting to do a big Frankenstein sort of, this mega Frankenstein movie. And so Frankenstein: The True Story was his lifetime sort of dream project. But also he discovered Vampira.
Melon
Normie, the first horror host. He discovered her. He was head of programming at a little ABC affiliate in Los Angeles, and he created the show for her to host horror movies. He wrote it. He produced it and everything, and is sort of responsible for all horror hosts.
So he gave birth to basically everybody today, from Elvira to Ivana
Seymour.
Yep.
Wow.
Everybody, Svengoolie, everybody. It goes right back to Hans Stromberg Jr. He also then became head of programming, vice president of programming for CBS, where he helped develop and get on the air shows like The Munsters. He actually cast his friend Yvonne DiCarlo as Lily Munster, and he personally added the 2 white stripes in her wig as an homage to Bride of Frankenstein. fine.
I still think Morticia was hotter, but
And he was behind Gilligan's Island.
Oh, seriously?
You know, Beverly Hillbillies, the Carol Burnett Show, Twilight Zone. He brought Hitchcock's show over to CBS and turned it into an hour and called it the Alfred Hitchcock Hour. He did Lost in Space. He did My Favorite Martian.
Wow.
I mean, the guy is so unsung hero, and that's what I'm writing about in my book. Is that he's
Is he still
pretty
with
amazing.
us?
He's not still with us, no.
Wow.
But and he also did things like, because he was such a horror fan, there was a series on CBS called Route 66. He did a Halloween
episode.
Wow.
He got his friend Boris Karloff to come in and convinced him to put on the monster makeup one last time. And it also had Peter Lorre in the episode and
Cheney
Lon
Jr.?
Chaney
Yes.
Jr. doing Wolfman.
Before his
And-
throat was all done up. You know?
yeah. So I mean, he was a monster kid, you know, getting his favorites in there, and you know, along with everything else that he was doing on his plate, and just an incredible character, and surprisingly enough, very openly gay. In the late 50s and 60s, when it was still illegal, it was still considered a mental illness, and you know, it's just amazing. So he's also a real trailblazer for the LGBTQ community. His next door neighbor was Liberace, who always came and performed at his parties.
Polish. Liberace was Polish, and Liberace starred in the highest rated episodes of the 1960s Batman TV show.
Oh, yeah.
What I think is hilarious about it is because of Liberace's proclivities. He is the only Batman villain to have 3 malls, not just one. They have to cover their bases for 2 episodes.
That's right. Well, I for my upcoming book on Hunt Stromberg Jr., I interviewed a lot. I've already been interviewing a lot of people who knew him well, like Angela Lansbury and stuff.
Wow. You talked to Lansbury?
Yeah, and
When did her brother pass?
I don't remember, but Hunt when he was this big executive in television,
Wild Wild West.
he did the Wild Wild West. In fact,
Who's Lansbury?
his lover was the producer's assistant on Wild Wild West.
Really?
Yeah. So
That's amazing.
anyway, he actually he knew Angela for all kinds of reasons, but he got Angela's 2 brothers their first jobs as executives in television and everything. So
That's hilarious. That's so great.
But I also interviewed Sid Sheinberg, who
Talked to Sid.
who was head of Universal and discovered, you know,
Did you go to
Steven
his house?
Spielberg and stuff.
Did you go to his house?
No, it was a phone interview.
Phoner.
But he, you know, I said, back in those early days, really, I mean, how out of the closet was Hunt Stromberg Jr., really? And he goes, Sam, with all due respect to the LGBTQ community, Hunt Stromberg was as gay as their sunshine in Cambodia, you know? And so, you know, he was definitely a real trailblazer. So anyway, it's just been so fun. And I sometimes teach at USC, University of Southern California, in the Cinematic Arts division there. And I've been doing a lot of research on Hunt Stromberg at their library, and Hunt left all of his papers with the library when, you know, willed them to after his death, and they have 25 boxes of stuff. So there's a major book.
Isn't it weird? I don't know if you noticed this, Sam, but when you do a bunch of articles, people will come up to you. You'll wind up in a Google search. Like I did the only interview. Warren Scarron, who co-wrote Beetlejuice and Batman and all this other stuff. I convinced him to do an interview, and it turned out he passed away shortly after the interview, and it gave the universe. This is the guy who, besides running Batman and the 2 Tim Burton movies, he's the guy who coined the term Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Wow.
He gave Tobe Hooper the title.
Whoa.
And I remember as a kid interviewing him, you know, and I was just out of high school, and it's like, and when he passed, I thought, and I remember writing as a bit for Starlight Magazine, I thought, well, at least he lived a good long life. He was 44 years old.
Wow.
But he seemed like an old man to me at the time, you know?
Yeah. That's so cool. That is great.
But you'll show up, and this has to happen to you with your writing as well. your name will suddenly show up, and my name and my work showed up in my letters with him. The letters we wrote will show up in his correspondence at the University of Texas.
Okay, you're not going to believe this, but I'm going through these boxes about Hans Stromberg Jr. at the library, and I find letters that I wrote to Hans Stromberg. And copies of my fanzine from 1974
He saved it.
with Frankenstein, the True Story on the cover.
God, I'm almost tearing up here.
And literally the hair on the back of my neck stood up and I go, well, this is all meant to be. I mean, I am the person to write this book.
But you just confronted letters from your teenage self. That's like a chicken breakdancing on your grave.
And in one of the letters, I swear to you, I was so obsessed with the movie. I said, in the letter, I said, if you could please send me enough photographs, I really want to try to get a book done on the movie and stuff. And I mean, it's kind of what I've done with this freaking magazine. We have over 400 photos that are unpublished, many of which were in the files that I found of Hans Stromberg at the library.
Everyone knows when you do an interview, when you do a magazine interview, you have tons of material on the cutting room floor.
Yeah.
Are you going to turn this into a book? Please tell me yes.
Well, that's what I'm doing with this book on Hans Stromberg Jr.
Oh, you're
there will be chapters, of course, devoted to this dream project of his, and it'll include a lot of the material from the magazine, but more that I couldn't include.
Wow!
And
congratulations, by the way.
Thank you. So it's going to be really fun. I should mention that I did write another biography book that had nothing to do with the horror genre. It was called Kay Thompson, From Funny Face to Eloise, and it was about the author of the Eloise children's books about the little girl who lives at the Plaza Hotel.
Scorsese, I think, did New York Stories about it. Right?
It was Coppola.
With Sophia, yeah.
Yes. And she was also an actress. She was in Funny Face with Audrey Hepburn and Fred Astaire. She played the fashion magazine editor and opens the movie with Think Pink and all that. But she was a big behind-the-scenes woman who was head of the vocal department at MGM, where she did arrangements and vocal coaching for Sinatra and Judy Garland and Lena Horne and everybody, and was also a big unsung hero that I really wanted to bring to light. And so I did that book. I worked on it for 10 years between directing projects and thought I would end up having to self-publish it because not that many people knew who Kay Thompson was. She was also Liza Minnelli's godmother and guided Liza's career and lived with her and everything. Then we took it out to some publishers, and it got into a bidding war and it ended up at Simon & Schuster. It got a huge publication.
Wow.
So I was really happy, and Liza was so excited about her godmother getting this attention that she designed a whole show around her and recreated her nightclub act, and it was called they had for box office reasons called it Liza's at the Palace, but Liza was playing Kay Thompson and doing her nightclub act, and it opened on Broadway, and I worked on it as a historical consultant, and it won the Tony Award for Best Theatrical Event. And so it was just a real dream period when the book came out and the Liza connection and everything. It was really fun. So, but I do this kind of writing about behind the scenes showbiz stuff when I'm not directing. I love working on that kind of stuff.
I love that, despite directing, and even a low budget film is a major hurdle. I mean, you have all these moving parts, and in fact, I would argue it's more difficult than a big studio movie.
Well, you really have to. You have to be organized. You have to go into every day. There's more stuff packed into every day than there is on a big studio movie. I mean, we're shooting 10 pages a day on these films usually. Wow. And so yeah, you really it does take a lot of ingenuity and prep and to really get it right and to maximize your tiny minimal resources. But anyway, we should, before we get too far down the road, we should talk about Elvira.
Yes. First of all, Miles Flanagan convinced me to give Elvira's Haunted Hills another look, and I was so glad he did because it's a brilliant movie. I mean,
thank you.
It's smart. It's full of Corman. It's full of Poe references.
Yeah.
But it's just, you have like 3 different gags in that movie that make you laugh so hard, you know?
Oh, that's great to hear. Well, this is how it all came about.
I mean, there's tons of jokes all through, but there's like, there's like 3 really smart visual and verbal gags. I mean, the whole movie's funny, but there's 3 gags in the middle. You know what I mean? I mean, you just lay out the audience, you know?
That's great to hear. Well, what happened was I went to, I had seen, I mean, I was a big fan of Elvira anyway as a horror host. And because her show had gone, it started locally in LA, but then it got syndicated around the country.
She went national, yeah. No, none of them had done that before.
Yeah. So then she did her first film, Elvira, Mistress of the Dark, which was 1988. And I loved that film. I thought it was hilarious. And then I did my first film, Guilty as Charged, in 1990. And shortly after that, I went to a party thrown by Terry Sweeney, who you might remember from Saturday Night Live.
And he also did a movie about the witches for De Laurentiis.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Terry, you'll recall, on that Saturday Night Live, always did Nancy Reagan in drag.
I think he played her on the cover of Entertainment Weekly, too.
Yes. And his husband, Lanier Laney, is also his comedy writing partner. And Lanier had gone to school with me at the University of South Carolina, so I had known them for many years.
Wow.
So I go to this party, and it was kind of a Hollywood party. There were a lot of celebrities there and stuff. And I see Cassandra Peterson. And I'm like, oh, I love Elvira. I've got to talk to her. So I go over and I start talking to her, and she goes, and what do you, and I said, I like laid it on thick. Oh my God, I'm such a fan. I love your movie, Elvira, Mistress of the Dark, blah, blah, blah. And she goes, what do you do? And I said, well, I'm a director. I just did my first feature called Guilty as Charged. And she went, oh, I just saw that. I loved that film. In fact, I loved it so much, I want you to, if I ever do another Elvira film, I want you to direct it. And I'm like, wait a minute.
Oh, cool.
How many glasses of wine have you had? And is this what happens at Hollywood parties? you know, everybody's like,
Give me a napkin deal memo.
I'm like, I'm not so sure I'm not sure she really means that. She's just, Hollywood talk.
Right.
But we did become friends, and I hired her to do a cameo in a Scream Queen comedy thriller that I did called Acting on Impulse. It was a Showtime movie with an incredible cast, I should just say.
Talk about it.
Nancy Allen, who I finally got to work with as a director after knowing her from my De Palma days.
Oh, that's right. That's a full circle for you.
Yeah, and Linda Fiorentino from Martin Scorsese's After Hours, which my short film had played with, so there was a connection there. And C. Thomas Howell, Zelda Rubinstein again, Isaac Hayes, Paul Bartel, Mary Warnoff.
Paul Bartel and Mary Warnoff in the same movie?
Yes.
Wow.
And all kinds of people. I mean,
Mary's in my last book.
Oh, wow. That's so cool. But a huge cast. I mean, I'm leaving out all sorts of people. Dick Sargent in his last movie.
Dick Sargent, wow.
But at any rate, I had Cassandra Peterson, who we all know as Elvira, come in and play a non-Elvira character where she plays a bouncer at a country western bar and has to card Nancy Allen and
almost a Pee-wee reference, right?
And Linda Fiorentino and C. Thomas Howell as they're going in the door, and she, I said, just have fun with it, figure out a character. So she borrowed a
She's
blonde.
a groundling after all.
She borrowed yes, exactly. She was a groundling, so she could improvise, and she borrowed a blonde wig from Daryl Hannah, who I'd known forever since The Fury, and came in and played this sort of Dolly Parton sort of character at the door, and was hilarious. And so, it was one day of work, but we became acquaintances and friends enough where we would stay in touch. So then a few more years go by. I finally get a call from her, and she says, "Hey, we finally are going to do another Elvira film."
She honored
and,
the.
She said, "But I should tell you, we are interviewing a number of directors, but you're on that list, and we definitely want you to come in and talk to us about it." So I'm like, okay, well, at least she's going to give me the opportunity, which is great, and remembered me enough to do that. So I go in. And she hands me the script. It's Elvira's Haunted Hills. And she goes, "Now, Sam, this is a spoof of the Vincent Price, Roger Corman, Edgar Allan Poe movies of the 60s, like Pit and the Pendulum, House of Usher, Tomb of Ligeia, those films. are you familiar with those? And I go, Cassandra,
Nah.
am I familiar with those? Okay, here is the Vincent Price's monologue at the climax of Pit and the Pendulum. And I said this, do you know where you are, Bartolome? You are about to enter hell. Hell, the Neverworld, the infernal region, the abode of the damned, a place of torment, Gehenna, Naraka, the pit, and the pendulum, the razor edge of destiny, thus the condition of man, bound on an island from which he can never hope to escape, surrounded by the waiting pit of hell, which must destroy him finally. And she cocks her head.
But I love that he gave the whole Wikipedia definition of hell.
She cocks her head, looks at me like I'm absolutely nuts, and says, "You're hired."
Yeah.
So I had actually learned that monologue when I was in school. It was a little acting, exercise or whatever, and we all had to do a monologue. And back in those days, I had to literally have a reel-to-reel tape recorder. I loved recording horror movies before videotape because at least I could listen to them over and over again.
Right.
And so I had Pit and the Pendulum on reel-to-reel. Wow. And I transcribed it, back and forth, every little word, and learned that for acting class, and I've never forgotten it to this day.
Wow, that was pretty good.
That's excellent. And I mean, you shot this. Did you shoot it on the sets from Oblivion?
No. It was several years later, and it was a different studio in Romania. But we used this same production designer, Radu Corceva, who had worked on the Oblivion films.
And, you did a great job on that,
And Cassandra had actually gone over to Romania before I was even hired to look at castles and to look at locations. And,
wow.
But then I had toured the castles when I was over there in the Oblivion days, and every castle claims that it's Dracula's castle, that Vlad the Impaler was here.
Yeah.
If he spent one night in a castle, it's Dracula's castle. And so I had gone to a bunch of them just to see it. And so when she said, when we want to try to shoot in a castle, and I'm like, Cassandra, that's not going to work. Most of the castles there are isolated. They're on hilltops. There's sometimes no electricity. There's no heating. There's, it's just, and I said, the Roger Corman movies. They weren't shot in castles. They were shot on sets. If we're going to spoof those, we've got to have that artifice.
Oh, you told her that.
And I said, because of my experience of being in Romania on Oblivion, the beauty is the cheap labor. We can go over there and build from the ground up the sets the way we want them to be, where they will look like the sets from the Corman movies, and then if we have to shoot a few exteriors or a little, stuff, we can go to actual locations for that. But even then, Corman's movies were the big, matte paintings and models and stuff of the castles and stuff. So that's what we ended up doing.
What is it with Romania? How much? Is it cheaper to go there? I mean, flying there. I mean, just to get everybody there, the traveling expenses.
Even with all of that, it's cheaper.
It's cheaper.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Heather told us this great story. She said you had Richard O'Brien, the writer and star of Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Yeah. We let me just explain to your audience.
Riff Raff.
He was Riff Raff in Rocky Horror. He plays the Vincent Price character in our film Elvira's Haunted Hills. And he wrote Rocky Horror, not only the play, but he wrote the music, the melodies, and the lyrics, and the screenplay.
And he's singing, too.
Yeah.
That's mailbox money right there,
I mean,
man.
he's a genius.
Wow.
And we had tried to get, for the character, the Vincent Price character, we tried to get Christopher Lee. We tried to get Mick Jagger, if you can imagine.
Wow.
We tried to get a bunch of people. None of that worked out. And then somebody's recommended Richard O'Brien, and it was like, oh wow, I bet he knows these movies, and we got in touch with him. He loves Vincent Price. He knew them backwards and forwards, just like we did.
How great!
And so these things always work out for the best, and he was absolutely brilliant. So, but anyway, tell me what Heather Hopper, who was an actress who plays the emaciated, very thin,
she's adorable in it.
Niece of the Vincent Price character in the film.
Yeah, she was your parody of House of Usher.
Yes,
the white wigged woman in the. So Heather said he got a check one day, and he looked in she didn't know how much it was for, but
Right.
she watched O'Brien peek into. Somebody sent him all his mail from England, and he peeked in, and he got a big grin on his face, and he held up a finger, and he said to you guys, "I'm taking you all to dinner tonight." Wow!
Yeah. Because, I mean, the guy makes a lot of money on Rocky Horror. I mean, it just keeps rolling in. Because, the plays performed all over the world all the
TV
time.
redos and all this.
everything.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we weren't paying a lot of money on our film. And it's not like he needed the money. He was doing it as a labor
Did
of
it
love,
for
just
fun,
like we.
yeah.
Did you interview him on it? And that's what I'm going to ask. Did you tamp down your journalism side, or did you pull him aside?
It's funny you mentioned that. When there was an issue of Little Shop of Horrors devoted to the Dr. Phibes movies, which I'm a huge fan of, the Vincent Price movies.
The great Justin Humphreys, I think, had a hand in that, right?
Yeah, and he and all of that went into the magazine ended up getting expanded into a book that just got released called The Dr. Phibes Companion that Justin Humphreys spearheaded. And one of my sidebar things is in that book.
You're in that book too?
Yeah.
Wow.
So we just did a
a
signing for it at Dark Delicacies last weekend. But at any rate, I did interview him for the Phibes magazine of Little Shop of Horrors, Richard O'Brien, because he actually played a what do you call it? A mortician or a what do you call the surgical guy that at the morgue who
Right,
deals with
yeah,
the
the
bodies?
coroner.
The coroner, thank you. Sorry. It's early. He played a coroner and got them to call the character Dr. Phibes. And so I was like, okay, if we're covering everything about Dr. Phibes, we got to cover this. And so I interviewed Richard O'Brien for that issue.
Yes.
And he talked about his love of Vincent Price and all that stuff. So it was great. So I did. Finally ended up interviewing him.
Wow. Did you talk to him about Flash Gordon?
A tiny bit, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a great movie.
Yeah, I mean, he's an amazing, absolutely amazing guy. But Elvira's Haunted Hills was so much fun to shoot. It was literally probably the most fun I've ever had on a movie because we couldn't stop laughing. We also had Mary Shear in it from Mad TV, and Scott Atkinson, who plays Dr. Bradley, and Scott was amazing. He did this incredible impression of
you can hear it
from All About Eve.
Right. He was doing the evil critic.
Yes.
My heart is my least vulnerable spot. Yeah.
Yes, and so he.
What's his name? Okay,
Oh my God! George Sanders. George Sanders.
Thank you.
He does this incredible.
Psychomania.
Yes. He does this incredible George Sanders impression the whole time. And then when we find out he's a charlatan and his real accent comes out, he switches over to a Dick Van Dyke in a Cockney right out of America.
Oh, God.
It's very funny.
And
that's one of the biggest laughs in the movie. I know we did Boobs and Blood.
Yeah. He's an amazing actor. And and Mary Jo Smith, who was also a groundling, plays Zuzu, the maid of Elvira. And basically the story is that Elvira, it takes place in the 1800s, has nothing it's not a direct sequel of the first film, which was present day. But it's the 1800s. She's on her way to Paris to, be a showgirl. And they end up getting stranded at this castle, and a Vincent Price type of creepy guy is there, and he's got all the sensitivities that you find that Vincent Price characters have in House of Usher and all those in Pit and the Pendulum and everything. And we built a Pit and the Pendulum set, and I mean it was all incredible.
Now, we've been talking about you as a director and a ton of work, and I want to give more attention to Haunted Hills and stuff. But give us, because you've been in the low-budget trenches.
Yeah.
Give us some of the horrifying moments. I mean, what you can laugh about now, but at the time.
When you see a movie like Ed Wood and they have the scene in the water where they have like this sort of octopus thing that's just this limp, dead nothing, and they're saying, lift it up and make it move and act like it's alive. And I mean, I've been in situations like that on the Oblivion film. It was Maxwell Caulfield and Richard Joseph Paul, who played the lead cowboy. They're in this cave, and this explosion happens, and the tremors make them fall into this pool of water. And there was supposed to be this creature that was going to rise up out of the water with tentacles and, do all this stuff. And, of course, we didn't have the budget for that, and what little pieces they were supposed to have that were supposed to kind of peek up out of the water didn't arrive. And I'm like, oh, what are we going to do? And so I just said, you just gotta act as though there's something under there that has grabbed you and pulling you under and everything. And we literally had to just have the actors improvise that something was happening that we never actually see on camera. Wow. And it was great. But and it worked out fine. But the other problem was that they'd built this cave in chicken wire and paper mache outside, and by then it was freezing cold. So the first day we get there to shoot this scene, the water is like about 33 degrees. I mean, the fact that it hadn't frozen over was unbelievable. And they got in, and it was like they couldn't stay in there for more than 5 seconds or they were going to have frostbite. And so we're like, we just couldn't even shoot the scene. And so I told the, producers at the studio, there's
Charles Mann? You told Charles Mann?
No. This is the Romanian.
Okay, I was going to say, I don't think Charlie Van would let you come out of that cave without footage.
I know. And I said, we got, the water has to be heated. There's just no way. So we shoot some other scenes, and we come back the next day, and they have heated the water so freaking hot now that it was so scalding. They got in, and they would turn beet red. And so we have footage of them in the cold water where they're turned white, and then we've got it in the warm water where they're beet red. And in the color correction stage, we literally had to go in and try to adjust the skin tones because of shooting it on 2 different days.
That's amazing. And I mean, you had it for, like you said, you had a great cast.
Yeah.
There was that wonderful guy whose voice sounds like a knife in a garbage disposal, Andrew Divoff.
Yes, Andrew Divoff. He plays Red Eye, the reptilian villain in it. And he also did another film for Full Moon, their family division, Moonbeam Films, called Magic Island.
Magic Island, which
and he played Blackbeard, the pirate, in that. It was a time travel, sort of Swiss Family Robinson kind of thing. And it had Zachary Ty Bryan, who was one of the kids on Home Improvement, and also French Stewart from Third Rock from the Sun.
Wow, before Third Rock.
No, it was after.
Really?
It was after.
Oh.
Actually, you talk about, Charlie Van's Full Moon movies having very little money. When I was making films for him, he had a deal with Paramount, and we actually had, way more money than he normally does. And so that's why we were able to afford, bigger casts. And the 2 Oblivion films we shot all together, back to back.
Oh, so you did them back to back. You didn't go back to Romania.
No, we didn't go back. We shot them back to back. And when I say back to back, it was set by set. If we were in the saloon, we'd shoot all the saloon scenes for
one
both
and
films.
two.
Yeah.
Wow.
And
so you pulled like a Salkin family thing.
Yeah, and it was exactly. It was like 3 and 4 Musketeers, and what he tried to do with Superman 1 and 2.
Yep. There's a Salkin clause in SAG.
Yes, that literally. I mean, and
they named them. They named them. They
the
do not
Salkin clause. Yeah. Because what happened, for listeners who don't know, on 3 and 4 Musketeers, huge cast. Christopher Lee was in it, and Faye Dunaway, and Charlton Heston. Michael York, everybody. And they started making this long-ass movie, and halfway through production, the producers, the Salkins, decide, you know what, we don't want so much footage on the editor's floor. We're just going to split it into 2 films, and we'll do it. Which 3 Musketeers and the 4 Musketeers.
The theory was that was the plan all along. Right?
It may have been the plan all along. There's some dispute about that, but at any rate, at some point they decided we're going to turn it into 2 movies. Well, they were not going to compensate the actors for 2 movies. They were just going to keep everybody on the same contract. Well, the actors sort of protested and had to go to their union, and the union had to intervene and say, well, now, wait a minute, guys. If you're doing a whole nother movie, you're going to have to compensate. And so from then on, it became the producers were the Salkin brothers, and
father and son.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, the father and son. You're right, Alexander and Ilya Salkin.
Very good. Yeah.
And so yes, there is the Salkin clause that SAG has for those types of projects, and we had to compensate the actors on the Full Moon movies for the 2 films, even though we're shooting it all as one.
But they're charming as hell, and I noticed they have a big shelf life. You see, even Elvira does a parody of them on her.
Yes.
Now, did you take that personal? Did you take it up with her?
I was thoroughly offended. And no. I mean, and William Shatner hosts one where he's making fun of the movie, and I'm like, damn it, people, leave our film alone. No, I sort of feel like it's the best compliment in the world. It's like if they're having fun with it, I have no illusions as to what it is. I mean, it is camp and it is fun, and so yeah, I was thrilled, absolutely thrilled.
Wow, I mean, because you look at them and they were big rentals, and they've been around forever. The box art is great. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And we had, in the Oblivion films, we had stop motion animation creatures
with the lobster in the.
I love that.
You had that famous Western
scorpion
scene where they have to put their hand in with the.
And it was. I mean, I grew up idolizing the Ray Harryhausen movies and the Sinbads and the Valley of Gwangi, and which also mixed elements of Western films, and
true.
It was one of our influences on Oblivion, and it goes back to the original King Kong, for Christ's sake. I love stop motion animation, and we were kind of one of the last gasps of that, and this was around 1994, I guess, that we made the Oblivion films, and the whole digital thing started to take over as computers became more sophisticated in the later 90s and stuff. So stop motion, you just don't see a lot of. I mean, Aardman is still doing it with, Wallace and Gromit and the different films that they do. But as far as actually doing creatures with stop motion, you don't see much of that anymore.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, and the fact that you were doing this, it felt like a big old 60s sci-fi movie.
And that's what I wanted. It was just, that's how it felt to me. And it was just so much fun. So much fun.
How long did it take to shoot both movies back to back?
We were shooting for about 2.5, 3 months. And we started, it was in the early fall, and it was hot as hell in Romania. But by the time we got toward the end of the production, there was snow. We had, and some of the actors, most of the actors were there the whole time, but there were a couple of actors that came, later in the show or whatever. And I forget exactly why, but we had to shoot some scenes on this exterior street. And then come back to the exterior street when another actor came in later in the shoot to shoot some other scenes. But they had, there had to be direct continuity almost. You walk out of one frame and enter this frame over here. And literally it was the same situation as the water. You had, 85-degree weather in one frame, and they walk into another frame where it is, 10 below zero.
You see
their breath. And literally we get to the set one day and it had snowed, and so they had to shovel everything out and get, hair dryers to melt the ice on the windows and, stuff like that. So, and again, in color correction, we had to, try to make it look the same. So we were fighting those kinds of obstacles.
That's amazing. I mean, that might be your best cast. Would you agree? Or
I've been really lucky.
Talk about your best cast. Some of them.
Incredible casts. That was certainly one of them. And as we talked about, Guilty as Charged with Rod Steiger, Heather Graham, Lauren Hutton, Isaac Hayes, Zelda Rubinstein.
For your first movie.
For a first movie, it was incredible. Then I did that Scream Queen thriller called Acting on Impulse that had Nancy Allen and everybody. And then I did one called Out There. That was a Showtime UFO comedy that had Billy Campbell, who was the Rocketeer.
Wow.
Wendy Shaw, who's the voice of the mom on American Dad.
And Inner Space, and she starred in the Bill Malone movie called Creature.
Yes.
Because she was adorable in Creature.
Yeah. And I got Rod Steiger to come back for that film. I also had Carl Stryken, who
Really?
who played another Undertaker,
Wow.
and we had
Judith Hogue from Ninja Turtles.
yes,
Wow.
and
Adam Ant
Adam Ant
from Nomads.
Yep.
Very scary movie with Mary Warnoff.
And just all kinds of people were in that one.
Donnie Most from Happy Days.
Yeah. Oh, now we're back to acting on impulse. Sorry.
Yes.
Yep. But then going forward to Out There with Billy Campbell, Wendy Shaw, Rod Steiger, and there was this scene where Billy Campbell gets thrown into jail overnight, and there was this small part of this weird guy that's supposed to be sharing his cell. And so we were trying to figure out who we'd get to play that. And the producer of the film, a guy named Larry Estes, who was amazing champion of my career.
Wow.
He was head of TriStar Columbia Home Video Acquisitions, and back in the video
Jill
days,
St. John.
Yeah, Jill St. John, and
Bill Cobbs, who lives here in Upland.
Bill Cobbs. Yeah. So he knows this guy. He had done financed a film called One False Move, and he knew the guy who wrote the One False Move and played a small part, played a supporting character in One False Move, and was now doing a show called Hearts of Fire. It was a sitcom that was shooting at the same studio. We were at CVS Radford in Studio City, and he saw him at the commissary and went over and said, "Hey, come join us for lunch." And so he sits down and we have lunch. And Larry said, "You know what? Let's ask him to play this role, this one-day role of this guy in the jail cell." And I'm like, "Great, this would be fabulous." So he comes in and does it, and he starts, in between takes and everything, he's going, "Oh yeah, we're almost on hiatus on my sitcom, and I'm going to go off and do this independent film I've been working on for a long time. I wrote it. I'm going to star in it." And he starts going into this weird voice of the character that he's going to play. And I say, "Well, what's the name of the movie?" And he goes, "Sling Blade." And of course, I'm talking about, this is Billy Bob Thornton.
Billy Bob.
And so we got Billy Bob literally before he stepped on a plane to go do Sling Blade. And he was fantastic to work with and a hilarious guy, and brought, to a nothing little part, brought everything to it and turned it into this really creepy, weird and funny guy. And it was, it was incredible. So that was great fun.
Jennifer Connelly's in it.
And this is the thing. Okay, Jennifer Connelly's sort of in it. So she of course met Billy Campbell when they were doing Rocketeer, and they fell in love, and they were an item. So when we were shooting, she would come and visit the set all the time. And so one day we're shooting in a grocery store, and there's Billy Campbell in the grocery line, and right behind him in the scene is Julie Brown, the fabulous Julie Brown from Earth Girls Are Easy, and she wrote Earth Girls Are Easy and starred in it with Gina Davis and Jim Carrey.
Yeah, she lactated in my hand once. I'll tell you off the air.
Okay. And Julie has become one of my absolute favorite, best friends of all time, and I've directed her in like 10 different projects. But at any rate,
she won't talk about her horror stuff though. I've tried to get her for a horror interview.
You got to get her for that.
Her assistant tried to get me the interview, but even after she lactated in my hand, I couldn't get an interview.
Yeah. My favorite thing with Julie is she did a novelty video in the late 80s called The Homecoming Queen's Got a Gun.
Yeah.
But at any rate, okay. So
and Santana on Batman the Animated Series.
Yeah. So going back to the story before we forget, the scene is between Billy Campbell and Julie Brown in this grocery line. But we need extras and stuff, and I want to do my little Hitchcock walk-on cameo. So I decide I'm going to be in line. And then Jennifer Connelly sitting over here who's visiting the set, and hey, Jennifer, come on, get in the scene with me, and we'll play a couple in line at the thing. So if you're looking very closely, you'll see Jennifer Connelly and me standing in the grocery line. Now, okay, this movie, in retrospect, we started out with one Oscar winner with Rod Steiger.
Right.
In retrospect, Billy Bob Thornton's an Oscar winner, and Jennifer Connelly's an Oscar winner. So we have 3 Oscar winners in that movie.
And Tino Insato.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's a hell of a cast.
And Robert Picardo.
Oh, that's right.
June Lockhart.
From Lost in Space, of course.
Just the most incredible cast. And so, yeah, back in those days, they let me get involved in casting. And I always wanted to put, one of my favorites and a recognizable face in every role, and I tried to do that all the time.
That's really smart. But they don't let you do that as much anymore?
Not so much anymore. But I mostly do last year I did 6 movies. In 2018,
Right on. Cool.
5 thrillers for Lifetime and 1 Christmas
You wrote
movie.
some of them too.
No, well, I have, but I'm kind of getting away from that. I don't like development hell. I hate it, and I hate all the rewrites and all the notes and everything. I'm basically now a gun for hire. I want to be just call me when you're ready to go.
You want to make the Christmas movies for Hallmark and Lifetime?
Yes.
And then
So I did 1 Christmas movie for Hallmark and 5 thrillers for Lifetime last year. And really, all of them are kind of corporately cast. They pretty much hand me the cast, and that luckily the casts are all really great. But it's just I'm not so much involved in that anymore.
You can't bring in George Takei for like a day player or anything?
I would love to, but they'd be like, most of the time it's like, no.
What was your schmaltzy Christmas movie about? Talk about that.
Oh, well, I've done about 7 now, but the one I did last year was really fun. It was called Christmas Made to Order, and it starred Alexa Pena-Vega from all the Spy Kids movies. She was the little girl in that.
Oh, dear God, now she's the female lead?
Yeah.
Wow.
The sex object?
Yes.
Oh, no.
Time marches on, people.
Yeah, kids grow up.
Yeah. And it also had Jonathan Bennett, who was the male lead in Mean Girls, and he's the host of Cake Wars, but he is right now currently a contestant on Celebrity Big Brother that's airing right now.
Shame on you. Reality shows are killing this business.
I know. And we had Jo Payton, Marie Jo Payton from who was the mom
70s show
on
that 70s show, right?
Yeah. No, it was oh gosh, no, I'm drawing a blank.
Oh, now I got to look.
Family Matters.
Oh, Family. Okay, cool.
She was the mom on that, and so anyway, it was a really fun, Christmas movie. There's a certain formula that you have to stick to. Is it
a businesswoman relieve pressure meets a bohunk in the middle of nowhere who
Well,
still believes in
I've done
marriage?
some of them. Some of the ones I've done, yes. This one, she wanted to start a holiday decorating business, and when she's decorating for Christmas at an office building, she meets a guy who's kind of the Scrooge who isn't into Christmas, and she has to,
Who plays him?
And that's Jonathan Bennett, and so she has to, Christmasify him by the end of the movie, and they fall in love, and happy ending. It's but it was very fun and sweet. What I do on the Christmas movies, and it's pretty much what they want, is I load up every single shot with Christmas. I mean, it's my theory is if somebody's just surfing through channels, whatever shot they randomly land on, I want it to just
smart.
That's a smart thing
Christmas.
to do. Yeah.
So
And you're shooting in March, right?
Well, we were shooting in the fall, and so we had to create our own snow and all that stuff. It's always, but I literally will load up sets with Christmas trees and lights and all that stuff. Crazy. I mean, I've been known. There was one film I did for them where there was what they in a house called a great room where the kitchen is open to the dining room area that's open to the living room. So big, kind of space.
Set or shot in somebody's house?
You always on these films and they were real houses.
Oh wow!
And I had literally 11 Christmas trees in that one space, and nobody could I kept telling the production designers and everything, more trees, because every angle, every close up, everywhere I look, I want there to be Christmas lights.
That's
something
really
behind
smart.
them.
If the average viewer looking for Christmas programming will find it in a single frame.
You're gonna get it. In my movies for sure. Absolutely.
Wow, that's really smart.
Yeah, it's fun, and the Lifetime thrillers are really fun because then that touches on all of my love of horror and stuff, and De Palma, and I can shoot suspense scenes and do a little more of that sort of film noir and use the camera in interesting ways for stalkers moments and things like that.
There's always two Lifetime approaches. there's the stalker boyfriend, Crazy Pants, and
Yeah.
then there's and then there's single white female is the other one they do all the time.
And
My roommate's trying to kill me.
I've done about 5 or 6 of each of those.
I mean, do you use all the tricks you learned from De Palma? And
Absolutely.
Have you heard from him when you were doing those movies?
I have not. I don't know that he's seen any of those. But yeah, I mean, there's always some kind of De Palma-esque moment in just about every film I do. I mean, I'm still carrying. I mean, he was such an incredible mentor, and I just learned everything by watching him prepare his films. I mean, I am a big thing about preparing ahead of time and going in with very detailed shot lists and everything. The people who work on my films, the crews and everybody are just kind of scratching their heads. I've never worked with the director this organized, and it's that I don't know how else to do it. And that was the training I got from De Palma. Another thing that I got, not directly from De Palma himself, but on the very first film I worked on with him, The Fury, Kirk Douglas walks onto the set the first day, goes around to every single crew member, introduces himself, and asks for their name and what they do, shakes their hand, glad to be working with you. The crew was in love with him from the get-go because they were actually, he was actually paying attention to them and treating them like human beings and like part of the family. And then day 2, he came in and he knew everybody by name.
Wow, incredible memory.
Everybody by name. So I have taken that to heart, and every movie I do, I make a point of learning every single crew member's name, every single actor's name, and at the end of the day, I go around and shake their hand and thank them by name.
That's a really special thing.
And because I just feel like we're it's like we're living the dream here, people. We all we're not making big money on these little films. We're working hard. The hours are kind of crazy. I don't go into overtime. My days are strictly 12-hour days and stuff. And believe me, the crews love that I don't go over. But I want everybody to feel like a family, and I try to create that atmosphere. And I think I accomplish it because everybody seems to really enjoy working on the films.
Well, and your films are fun to watch. Do you have a favorite of them? What are your favorites of your own work, if I can ask?
Well, I guess.
Elvira's
Haunted. I mean, you're asking me to pick my, children,
But I know some children are faster and better than others. Tell us about that.
But no, Elvira's Haunted Hills only because because of my love of those Vincent Price movies that were spoofing. I mean, it was what Mel Brooks did to the Universal Frankenstein films with Young Frankenstein. We were doing to those Vincent Price movies that I hold so dear to my heart, as does Cassandra Peterson, as did Richard O'Brien.
Right.
It was just this whole labor of love to do a tribute to Vincent. And we all knew Vincent, and Cassandra got to know him, I got to know him, and we dedicated the film to him. So yeah, I mean, that's a special place in my heart for sure.
Well, and I remember you had the greatest pull quote. You had the greatest quote on your poster. It was from Stan Lee. You remember this?
Yes, I forget the quote.
I remember the quote because I love Stan.
Okay.
The date movie for guys who can't get a date, which I thought was hilarious.
Yes!
How did you get Stan Lee on your poster? That was hilarious.
It was so great. Well, Cassandra, of course, knows Stan Lee. And when he did the Kamikaze?
No, Stan Lee's Kamikaze. That's right. She was one of the guests.
She and he were sort of co-presenting the first year or two.
Wow.
And so they've known each other for a long time. So
she just marched up and got a quote.
Yeah,
that's hilarious.
Yeah, it was a great quote. You're right. I'd forgotten that.
What was the most brutal movie you had to make? I mean, just the one that just took a toll on you.
That's a good question. I mean, the trickiest. I mean, I think it's just when you have weather problems. And especially when we're shooting on locations and whatnot. I did several films last year in Louisville, Kentucky, and what pops into my mind are the couple of ones where rain just was a killer,
that can
and
ruin.
you don't have the money and to when we have to reschedule, oh my gosh, we have all these exteriors today, or we're shooting in a boat on a lake and now there's a storm coming in that wasn't even predicted, and it's like, whoa. So that, it's up against Mother Nature. Where it's just no control whatsoever, that is the most daunting. And for someone who's so organized as I am, it kind of, really throws a monkey wrench into the works, and I have to, adjust on my feet how to, get around this. We literally were on a boat, on a yacht, shooting when this storm came in, and we had to get back to shore, and it was even a little, we were worried even dangerously we were going to get struck by lightning or whatever.
Wow.
And we, ran into this restaurant, and we were scrambling around, now what are we going to do? We're going to have to cancel the day shooting. I was like, we're not canceling the shooting, people. We're going to shoot something. So I said, we've got a scene in a restaurant bar thing. We're in a restaurant bar. Let's do it. And the production designer, but what about the food and stuff? And I said, well, they make food here.
So literally, you use food as prop.
Yeah, I mean, we just improvised everything and just set up the scene and started doing it. And so, you just can't waste time on these little films. You got 10 pages to do every day.
Wow, and you always make your 10.
Oh yeah, I mean, I pride myself in never, ever, ever going over schedule or over budget, and I haven't. And a lot of times they have to go back and do pickup shots and shoot additional scenes and stuff, and that. I mean, knock on wood, as soon as I brag about it, it'll happen on my next film. I hope not. But that just doesn't happen.
The Michael Cimino of Lifetime.
But yeah. No, it's all. I just feel like that's part of the challenge that I have to step up to, and it's why I keep getting invited back, because they can count on me to bring it in on budget and on schedule.
No, having trained in the world of the run and gun Charlie Band School.
Yeah.
Does that help? Having done horror and genre, does it help to do a Lifetime or a Christmas movie where you're not really a slave to special effects? Now you can just cut loose.
You bring everything is great training to have, and you have an arsenal of I've just done just about every circumstance, every type of scene you could
really
possibly
exciting,
imagine. Yeah. So literally every time I'm doing a scene, I'm having deja vu of this is kind of like what we did on such and such. And, oh, yeah, we had that problem. Oh, I'm going to avoid that problem this time around. And it's always trying to make it a little better, learn from past experience. And it's, I enjoy all genres. I mean, even with the writing I did, I did a biography on Kay Thompson, who was a musical gal. And, it was totally opposite of the horror genre. But I was just as obsessed and into that as I was in any of these horror things. So I really like it all. I do comedy, do whatever. It's just fun for me.
No, especially in your early days when you were writing and directing a lot of your work, how much did you feel, when you break it into two, how much loyalty and fealty to the script did Sam the director owe Sam the writer?
Well, I haven't written much of the stuff that I've directed. I much prefer to direct other people's work. I think I get a little too attached to the material if I've written it myself, and I don't have enough objectivity. I did one film, it was called Kiss of a Stranger, with Mariel Hemingway, Diane Cannon, David Carradine.
Oh my God.
Corbin Burns. It was a really fun movie. And I had written the script and everything. But I enjoy working with other material, because I can be objective. Sense, I can see where the mistakes are happening or where it's dragging, or it's just a different experience.
Okay, since you just brought him up,
yeah.
I need a David Carradine story.
Okay, well, this was in the latter part of later years of his career.
Pre-Kill Bill.
Pre-Kill Bill. he unfortunately he's no longer with us. Just an incredibly great guy, and he came in for a couple of days. And I had heard different stories about his sobriety and other sorts of things, so I was a little concerned. But in the movie, he was playing the father of Mariel Hemingway, and he was playing a kind of an aging rock and roll star who had substance abuse issues and everything. So I was kind of
Sam, I'm going to need to do some research.
Yeah. So we were kind of prepared that even if there were, if he was one or two sheets to the wind, that could work fine. But he came in and was great. He was really, really, really good. He was sharp as a tack and did a fantastic job with the scenes. And I wish I had something more colorful to tell you, but he was a pro.
I interviewed him right before he went to Thailand for Fangoria.
Yeah.
And his agent goes, "You're going to love David. David's the greatest guy.
Yeah.
You're going to be in the middle of the interview and you're going to think, this is the greatest guy I've ever talked to." And he goes, and David, charming as hell, is going to lean over and he's going to ask you, "How did you get my number?" And he goes, "And you will not." And I go, "Well, from your agent." And he goes, "No, you will not say from your agent. You will forget my name." He was terrified. I mean,
oh my God.
He did not want David to know how the interview got set up. And he goes, "He's going to ask you 3 times." I go, "Yeah." And then he goes, "You're going to tell him, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know." And he was right to the button. He would ask, you know what I mean? I mean,
yeah.
He would tell you like 5 great stories about making Larry Cohen's Q, the Winged Serpent. "Hey, how'd you find my number?"
That's great. Also in that film, Corbin Burnson, we had him for a day to play Mariel Hemingway's boss, and he came in just this bundle of energy and was like, "Hey, man, let's get this show on the road. We want to go home early today."
Wow.
And he was like practically doing the assistant director work, And,
oh, seriously?
Yeah, he was just an absolute powerhouse. I loved working with him. He was really fun.
But he comes in for a one-day gig and
Yeah.
he's watching your back. He's keeping everything moving.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah. No, he was really magnificent. But it's also, he did LA Law and stuff. That TV training as well. There's no time there either, and so it's you get. A lot of the actors that I work with have had soap opera training. They're like, "What?
Oh, yeah.
You're only doing 10 pages today? Slackers." They're used to doing, 25, 30, 40 pages a day.
You know what? It's funny. The actress Barbara Luna told me, she goes, "You get something they call soapheimers, where all your short-term memory is gone because you're memorizing pages and pages and pages of stuff."
Yeah. Well, I did a TV series called From Here On Out, and it had Juliette Mills was playing.
The professor, man.
And
Beyond the Door.
Yeah, and she, Haley Mills' sister.
Oh, yeah.
Her dad was Sir John Mills, from a real British acting dynasty. And she's married to Maxwell Caulfield.
Wow,
small world. Anyway, she was playing the receptionist in this sort of sitcom, and we were shooting. I mean, this was really low budget and really tight schedule. We're shooting 6 half-hour episodes in 6 days. So we were shooting basically 25, 30 pages a day.
Well, this wasn't Passions. This was something else?
This was for Here TV. It was a gay network. It was a gay comedy series. And kind of like 30 Rock, it was kind of behind the scenes at a gay network and all the craziness that goes on. And she's playing the receptionist at this gay network. So we had her for 2 days, and every scene in all 6 episodes was in the reception area. And so she literally had about 60 pages of dialogue to do in 2 days on a weekend, because the only time we could use this reception area in an office building. So it was on a Saturday and Sunday. And, I was like, "Juliet, are you, she's a woman of a certain age." I'm like, "Are you going to be able to, do we need I'm happy to get you cue cards, whatever you need. And she was like, darling, I was on Passions. This is a walk in the park.
Wow.
And she came in and knew every line of dialogue. It was just incredible.
That's great.
It reminds me, the actress Sarah Douglas told me this great story that she was right out of RADA or whatever, and she was doing the Superman movies. Mm-hmm. And she said the world's greatest actor was doing a scene with her, Marlon Brando.
Yeah.
And he walks up to her, and she thinks he's going to say something memorable to her. And he starts hanging his lines off her face on little Post-it notes.
Oh, my God. Yes. You get those Brando stories all the time. In Apocalypse Now, he's in that, when he does those scenes where he's in the, dark, I don't know what, hut or whatever, and little shafts of light or whatever hitting his face, and he's turning his head this way and that, and everybody's going, brilliant performance. What he had done is he put Post-its of his lines like all over the room.
Wow.
And he would look over here and deliver a line, and then he'd look over up this way and deliver a line, and it was all his doing because he could never learn his dialogue.
No, one of the classic things about the low budget jungle is that since you brought up substance abused performers, what do you do when you have somebody who's coked out of their brain or something? How would you work with it?
There's been a few times when we've had issues like that, and it's tricky. It can be tricky, but you just power through. I just figure out, all right, I'm going to need this line here. I may have to feed it line by line, and it all gets cut together in the editing room. But I make sure we
just
got it.
Reaction shots and then
sometimes you're shooting the other actor without the other person even on the set, sometimes.
Just giving them time to drink coffee and get...
Or, things will go quicker if they're in their dressing room.
If there's no Chuck mumbling in the corner.
Yeah.
We're coming to the end of the show. We've got about 3
By the way,
minutes.
isn't this fast? Okay, since now if you guys want to share the sheer joy of meeting, I don't know if Sam number 2 is going to be there, but Sam, you're going to be an honorary Scream Queen at Del and Sue's Dark Delicacies.
Yes, darling, I am a Scream Queen. And Dave
DeValle
David Dakota has an annual Scream Queens and Kings convention at Dark Delicacies.
Donna Wilkes, baby, Jaws 2, Angel. Oh my God. Sorry.
And it's a store in Burbank,
Magnolia
on
Boulevard. Starts at 2 p.m. Sunday,
This Sunday, the 27th, January 27th, 2019, if you're listening to this and archived.
This is true. It'll be playing throughout the weekend.
Yeah. But I will be there at tables with people like Adrienne Barbeau.
I did a Bigfoot. Hey, she sends everyone I kill. She sends everyone after me, and I did a Bigfoot. I'm 6'9". I did a Bigfoot movie called Hoax in Colorado. And
wow!
Adrienne Barbeau sends them to find me.
Well, that's great. And Brink Stevens, she was had a little part in acting on Impulse with me, so it's gonna be great to see her. And a whole bunch of other Scream Queens and Kings.
She's like the Demi Moore of the Scream Queens, you know what I mean?
Jim Minorski is going to be there.
Of course.
And David
Kelly Maroney.
Yeah, and David Del Valle. Just, come out and see us. I'm going to be signing the Frankenstein, the True Story magazine that we talked about.
Are you going to bring your Rondo?
Yeah, you know what? I should.
Yeah.
I will.
I'm glad you
mentioned that. And I also interviewed Elvira for a Scream magazine. That just came out.
We will be there.
So I'm going to be signing copies of that, and I'm going to have pictures to sign. I'm going to have that picture of me standing with Angie Dickinson, all bloody, in the elevator.
Shot.
I'm going to sign that picture, and, so it'll be fun.
No, hey, again, Sam, by the way, new goatee. You look like your Mirror Universe evil twin over there, Sam. So, Sam Irvin.
We really appreciate you picking Sam up and bringing him here.
I love it. This is a fascinating interview.
You didn't say anything this time. He was chatty as hell last time. That has been the silent majority of the time.
I know when to keep my mouth shut. I've been married 40 years.
It's always safer that way.
Down the street from Dark Delicacies. I walk over. It's my neighborhood.
That's fantastic.
We'll see you there too.
It's a Burbank's most endangered strip. they're raising the price on Del and Sue
And Creature Features was a store that had
White.
to close. Yeah,
Yes.
and so that it's
Really serious mass.
yeah. And Dark Delicacies, they're having trouble, with their
I
lease
hate
too.
that.
So
Yeah, I hate that people are going after. I mean, Dark Delicacies is
it's an
a
institution.
25-year institution.
Yeah. No,
You
it'll
know?
be really sad. There was a big article in the Los Angeles Times about the troubles they're having. So there's going to be a big fundraiser for them.
On
early.
Groundhog Day on February 2nd.
excellent.
And Guillermo del Toro is helping them out. I thought that was really great of him.
Yes.
I did a cover story on him in Starlog magazine.
That's so cool.
Well, we really appreciate you coming in. You had some
Yeah.
great stories,
Sam,
man.
thank you.
Non-stop.
Oh, Sam, hey, listen, Sam I am and Sam you am. We need you guys back.
Double Sam. I couldn't help it, man. I just had to say something funny.
Can I plug one thing?
Damn right you please.
Yeah.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, the world's only bar passing Uber driver. Go on.
No, February 17th on PBS 7:30, Black History Showcase. I'm in one of the short films.
Really? Which one are you in?
I'm in Rolling in the Deep. I play the owner of an all-white cafe in South Carolina in 1945.
Wow.
No, are you weirdly progressive and you're cool with change, or are you?
I'm a racist redneck. I'm not as bad as the other guys who come.
No, we're asking about your character.
This film has won 22 awards.
Oh, boy.
All over the place.
Oh, we were watching. What's the name of it? Rolling in the D?
Rolling in the Deep by Marcellus Cox, a local Los Angeles filmmaker. It's going to be on
February 17th.
at 7:30 p.m. on the PBS stations.
Okay, everybody, tune in.
Check your local listings because they change.
And by the way, both Sams, where can people follow you on Facebook, Twitter, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera?
There you go first.
Sam Irvin, you can follow me on Facebook, that's the best way to reach me is on Facebook. I mean, I'm on IMDb, of course. You can look at my credits. I also have an extensive bio on Wikipedia that's pretty up to date.
All right, Sam, where can people follow you?
Well, you can go on Twitter at White Hill Actor. White Hill Actor, or on Facebook, Samuel Robert Whitehill.
Oh, yeah. By the way, every time I get an email from you, it looks like something from Colonial Washington.
I keep my name changing all the time for safety.
Right. That's great.
Yeah.
All right.
Gentlemen,
Thank you for coming to the Jeff and Janky Show. We're signing off.
We loved having you.
Next time.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. And have a great weekend, gang.
Thank you.
No, thank you
right.
guys. You were amazing. Thank you. Wow.
All right. Oh.
My phone's out of power. We gotta
Thank
do a
you,
group
Bernard.
photo.
Oh yeah, we need to do photos.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
This is better than.
Can I? I've been holding it in. Can I run to the
Yes.
bathroom?
Oh yeah. I'll get you the key. Hold on. Don't move. Don't move. I'll be coming right back. Yeah, it's on the wall.
That was great. It's better than very gross.
Your fine work.
Hey, so what is Sandy
Cool. Thank you, sir.
from Sandy's Inside?
Thank you, sir. So you've been working a lot?
I'm in 5 different. I'm running this here for 5 feature films. I'm in the next couple of months.
Basically,
I play a psychiatrist in 2.
Wait, any horror? Any sci-fi? Anything we can talk for?
Those are both horror films. Psycho, and I play in a comedy. I play a sort of a granddad of a gay grandson, and he's my friend. We're very close. It's a comedy. And then as I just got my first Western.
Congratulations. What is it?
It's called, I can't tell you the name of it.
Oh, NDAs, yeah.
But it's with a French director.
What's his name?
His name is
Eve?
no, it's Philippe.
More?
Philippe Lawrence Dumont.
His name's long as you are.
Durand. Yeah. It's called actually a French cowboy. I play a
Wow.
Gabby Hayes guy. So I did it.
Oh, you're doing the mumbling?
I got to talk like this all the time. he said you got to up your accent and your energy. So I got to, in the audition, I sort of said, "Okay, French cowboy." You say it. You don't say, "I'm sorry." You say, "I don't."
Wow.
And then 40 years to the month, I interviewed her again for this magazine.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Congratulations on the rondo, by the way.
Thank you.
One second, guys. Do you want to go live on the app?
What?
Do you want to go live on the app?
Sure, why not?
Why not?
Let's spread it like wildfire.
Oh, and Heather Hopper says hi.
Oh, great.
We're going to have her on one of these days.
That's so
The
cool.
Hopper. Wow.
Yeah, she's adorable.
She was in my film Elvira's Haunted Hills. And she was fantastic.
Hopper? Wow.
And by the way, that's a great movie. I mean, Miles Flannery.
Not Hedda Hopper. Not the dead gossip column.
Tell us when you want the silence, Bernard.
How about Llewellyn Parsons?
Yes, well, I was in my first. No.